Gate agent Karen Beckett glanced from the passport photo to the older black man standing before her and made a career-ending decision. She couldn't know the man she was about to humiliate was a senior investigator from the Department of Homeland Security, and she had no idea his only mission today was to confirm the ugly rumors about her were true. The air at Denver's Gate C-22 hung heavy with anxiety and the scent of burnt coffee. Under the sterile fluorescent lights, Beckett, a woman with a severe haircut and a name tag reading K. Beckett, snatched the document. Great, she thought, her lips tightening into a razor-thin line. Another one of these. Her eyes darted from the photo to the man's face and back again. "Is this really you?" she asked, her voice sharp and loud enough for half the gate to hear. Elias Stone met her hostile gaze, his expression a mask of calm. "It is." 4 complaints in 2 months, he thought, his hands resting calmly on his carry-on. All from black men, all detailing the same degrading treatment, at this exact gate, with this exact agent. To the world, he was just a man in a travel jacket on his way to San Francisco. His authority was hidden in plain sight. "Something's not adding up here," Karen Beckett declared, pushing the passport away as if it were contaminated. Her red nails tapped an aggressive rhythm on the countertop. "What's your business in San Francisco?" "Risk management," Elias replied, his voice even. "Risk management?" She echoed the words, dripping with scorn. "What kind of risk are you managing?" "Security," he said. It was the complete truth, just not in a way she could possibly imagine. Her eyes narrowed, raking over him from head to toe. She wasn't processing his answers. She was confirming her own biases. "So this is how it begins," Elias mused, with a look that has already convicted you. "I'm not letting this go through without verification," she announced, her tone final. She jabbed a finger toward the side of the counter. "You need to step aside, over there." Elias moved to a nearby pillar without protest. He didn't check his watch or sigh in frustration. He simply observed. In his profession, patience wasn't a skill. It was a weapon. He watched her shake her head while hammering at her keyboard. Then she glanced at the next passenger, a young white man in a college sweatshirt, and gave him a knowing, conspiratorial smirk. It was a look that screamed, "You won't believe the people I have to deal with." That was all the proof Elias needed. A cold certainty washed over him. This was no longer an audit to gather facts. This was now the final exam, and Karen Beckett had no clue she was the one being tested. She waved the young man up, her entire personality shifting in an instant. A bright, artificial smile appeared. "Mr. Hayes, have a great flight to San Francisco. Boarding will commence in just a few minutes." The interaction lasted less than 5 seconds. Elias watched as the line began to move. A family with tired kids, a consultant shouting into his phone, a young couple holding hands. Every single one was processed with efficiency and a smile. The line flowed smoothly for everyone. Everyone except him. After 5 minutes that felt like an hour, Elias stepped back to the counter. "Excuse me," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I was hoping for an update on my verification." Karen didn't even look up from her screen. "It's processing," she snapped. Then, letting out a loud, dramatic sigh for the audience, she finally raised her head. The phony customer service smile was gone, replaced by pure, undisguised contempt. "Sir," she said, leaning in as if explaining something to a child, "let me ask you one more time. Are you absolutely positive this is your passport?" "I am," Elias stated, holding her gaze without flinching. "Because this picture," she said, tapping the photo with a sharp fingernail, "looks nothing like you. The whole story feels wrong." A woman in the front row let out an audible gasp, her eyes flicking between Elias's dignified face and the passport photo. The resemblance was obvious. "That is a valid U.S. passport issued last year," Elias said, his composure absolute. "City of birth?" she shot back. "Chicago." "Middle name?" she demanded, sensing victory. Elias paused for a beat. "Franklin." A triumphant smirk twisted her lips as she typed. She had him now. She was certain of it. "This is a forgery," she declared, her voice ringing out for the entire gate to hear. Before Elias could respond, she seized the passport in both hands and ripped it in half. Rip! The sound tore through the terminal's quiet murmur. A nearby passenger whispered, "Oh, she is in so much trouble." The two halves of Elias Stone's passport, a federal document, lay on the counter like garbage. Karen Beckett crossed her arms, her face a mask of grim satisfaction. "You will wait right here for airport security," she announced to the silent, watching crowd. "You are being detained for attempting to travel on a fraudulent document." The silence was deafening. No one was pretending not to stare anymore. Cell phones were already up, their tiny red lights blinking in the harsh airport glare. Finally, Elias spoke, his voice dangerously low. "I need you to say that again." She just smirked. "You heard me." Just then, a younger crew member rushed to the counter. "Karen, what's going on?" "We have a forgery situation," she said, puffed up with self-importance. "I've already neutralized the threat." The young man's face went pale with horror. "You tore up his passport?" "It was a fraudulent document," Karen insisted, turning back to Elias. "Sir, do you have any legitimate identification on you?" Slowly, deliberately, Elias reached down and opened his black leather carry-on. There was no rush in his movements, no anger. He reached inside and pulled out a slim, professional wallet. He didn't hand it to her. He simply flipped it open, revealing a gleaming gold seal and the bold, unmistakable print of his federal credentials. He held it up. The young crew member's face drained of all color. "Sir," the young man stammered, his voice barely a whisper. What agency is that?" Elias's voice was like ice. "Homeland Security, Office of Professional Responsibility." He snapped the wallet shut and placed it back in his bag. The smug certainty on Karen Beckett's face shattered, instantly replaced by a wave of sickening, gut-wrenching dread. "I'm going to need a list of every agent and manager on this concourse," Elias continued, his voice resonating with authority through the now silent gate. "Right now." The smirk was gone. The power had evaporated. All that was left was the dawning, horrific truth of her actions. "You just committed a felony," Elias said, letting each word land like a hammer blow. "You destroyed the passport of a federal investigator during a live compliance audit. You made a public accusation of a crime, and you denied boarding without cause. I suggest you call your manager, now." He never raised his voice. He didn't need to. He stood there, a portrait of absolute control, as Karen Beckett's world disintegrated around her. Her face, once a mask of smug power, was now chalk white. Her crossed arms were no longer defiant. They were a desperate attempt to hold herself together. The young crew member was already speaking rapidly into his radio. The murmurs from the crowd of passengers began to rise. "Called it," a man holding a tablet said to his wife. "She was polite to everybody else." He steps up, and it's like a switch flipped. Blatant profiling. Karen looked around wildly, her eyes finally landing on Elias. "Wait, please," she whispered, her voice strained. "I'm sure we can sort this out." Elias's gaze was like granite. "You escalated this beyond a misunderstanding the second you put your hands on government property." She physically recoiled as if he had struck her. At that moment, an airport security officer, his name tag reading Russo, walked up. "What's the situation here?" Elias turned his head slowly. "That agent illegally destroyed a federal document. My passport." Officer Russo blinked, confused. "Sir, do you need to file a report?" A woman in the crowd let out a short, sharp laugh. "Oh, it's way past a report. Check your phone." Another passenger held his device up. "It's already going viral. The airline is tagged and everything." Karen spun toward the officer, her voice shrill with panic. He was being difficult. He refused to cooperate. "That is false," Elias stated calmly. "I provided a valid U.S. passport. I answered all of her questions, and I stepped aside as instructed. The airline's own cameras will confirm my statement." He tilted his head toward a security dome on the ceiling. "And that camera, right there, will confirm it too." Officer Russo's hand went straight to his shoulder mic. "Dispatch, lock the surveillance footage for gate C-22. We have a possible federal incident here." The sharp sound of heels clicking on the tile floor announced a new player. A woman in a crisp blazer approached, her badge identifying her as Sharon Price, terminal manager. "Ms. Beckett," she said, her voice sharp and unforgiving. "My office now?" Karen hesitated for a second, then followed like a zombie, her face ashen. The manager turned to Elias. "Sir, on behalf of the airline, I deeply apologize. Could I have a word with you in private?" "Of course," Elias said. As they walked down a sterile service corridor, a sea of cell phones followed their every move. The court of public opinion had already reached its verdict. The small beige-walled interview room was cold, the air humming from a vent overhead. Sharon Price closed the door, her expression shifting from supervisor to crisis manager. "I'm Sharon Price," she said. "I need to document this incident for the record. Mr. Stone." Elias Stone. He retrieved the government wallet from his carry-on and slid it across the metal table. She picked it up. Her eyes scanned the gold seal, the official photo, the ID number. She went completely still. "You're conducting an audit?" "I was," Elias said flatly, "until your employee escalated it into a federal crime." Sharon Price exhaled slowly, the clipboard in her lap now utterly useless. "I see," she said, her voice tight. "I need to contact my district director and the airport police command." "I would expect so," Elias replied. "You'll also need the complete, unedited surveillance footage from Gate C-22, from all angles." An hour later, the airline's district office was a pressure cooker. Sharon Price stood with two new faces, Robert Gable, a bulldog of a district director, and Lydia Marsh, the airline's top corporate counsel, whose expression was polished ice. "We are unequivocally committed to a full and transparent investigation," Lydia Marsh began, her voice smooth as silk. "And we will cooperate with any and all federal agencies." Elias sat opposite them, his federal ID still on the table, a silent, powerful reminder of the stakes. "I'm sure you will," he said. "But let's be very clear. This was not a simple mistake. Your employee accused a citizen of a felony and then publicly destroyed a federal document." Robert Gable leaned forward, his hands clasped, trying a reasonable tone. "Mr. Stone, we understand that in these situations, emotions can run high." "Mine did not," Elias cut him off, his voice quiet but absolute. The room went dead silent. That single sentence had just torched their entire damage control playbook. Lydia Marsh, the corporate counsel, shifted her strategy. "Mr. Stone, what is it you're looking for here? Is this about a lawsuit?" "I'm not here to discuss a settlement," he replied, his gaze sweeping over their panicked faces. "I am here to finalize my report." He reached into his carry-on, pulled out a thin folder, and placed it on the table. The soft thud echoed in the tense silence. He opened it. "This is the preliminary report for my office. It includes a history of formal complaints filed against this airline. 5 of them originated at Gate C-22. 4 of them," he paused, looking each executive in the eye, "name Ms. Karen Beckett specifically." He slid a summary across the table. All 4 of those complaints were filed by African-American men, and they all described the exact same pattern of baseless suspicion and public humiliation you witnessed today. He looked directly at Lydia Marsh. "Does that sound like a simple misunderstanding to you?" The air left the room. This was never just about one destroyed passport. Elias had just laid out a documented pattern of systemic, racially motivated misconduct, and his own case was the final, irrefutable proof. Just then, an assistant hurried into the room holding a tablet. "It's on the national news," she whispered, her voice shaking. "The video from the gate. It has over 2 million views." Lydia's professional composure finally cracked. "If we arrange for you to speak with our head of diversity and inclusion?" Elias looked at her with a trace of pity. "My job is to report the facts, not to help you craft a press release." He stood, collected his folder, and put it back in his bag. He looked down at the executives who were now drowning in a crisis of their own making. "You have a very small window to do the right thing," he said, "and it's closing." The final reckoning didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened back in that same sterile interview room. Karen Beckett sat at the table, this time facing Sharon Price and a stone-faced Robert Gable. "We've seen the security footage, Karen," Sharon began, her voice ice-cold. "We've seen the passenger videos, and we have read Mr. Stone's official report." "It was a fake ID," Karen insisted, her voice shrill. "It was not," Robert Gable growled. "He is a senior federal investigator for Homeland Security. The U.S. Attorney's Office has already contacted us. He slid a single piece of paper across the table, a resignation form. You have two options, Sharon said, her voice absolute. One, you sign this. You resign, effective immediately, and you walk away. She leaned forward. Two, you refuse. We terminate you for cause and we hand your entire employee file, including the past complaints from Chicago O'Hare and the 4 from this airport, directly to the Department of Justice. You will face federal charges for destruction of government property and a civil rights investigation. You will lose everything. Karen stared at the paper, her hands trembling. All the arrogance had vanished, leaving only a terrified, cornered woman. There was no way out. She grabbed the pen and scrawled a jagged signature. Your ID badge. Now, Sharon commanded, holding out her hand. Wordlessly, Karen unclipped the plastic card that had given her so much power and placed it in Sharon's palm. It was over. Her escort out was a walk of shame down a series of gray service corridors. As she was led to the employee parking lot, carrying a cardboard box with her belongings, she saw them. The young crew member who had tried to help, talking with Officer Russo from the gate. They stopped. They didn't smile or gloat. They just watched her approach. The young man looked at her, then at the box in her hands and gave a single, slow nod. It wasn't a nod of pity or of triumph. It was a nod of finality. The system had finally worked.